Picture the Monopoly man. He is wearing a black top hat. He has a white moustache. He has a formal suit. And maybe, in your mind, he has one tiny glass circle over one eye. A monocle. But he does not have one. If you pictured it, your brain added something that was never there. That mistake feels small, almost funny, but it points to something much more unsettling. Most of us imagine memory as a recording. Something happens, the brain stores it, and later we press play. But research tells a stranger story. When you remember an event, your brain does not simply open a perfect file. It gathers pieces, images, feelings, facts, guesses, expectations, and context. Then it rebuilds them into a story that feels complete. Usually, this works well enough. You remember where you live, you remember your friends, you remember yesterday. But small details can change. Missing pieces can be filled in, suggestions can slip into the story. And the most disturbing part is this. A memory can feel vivid, emotional, and completely real, while still being wrong. So why would the brain work this way? Why would evolution build a memory system that trades perfect accuracy for flexibility? The answer starts almost a century ago with a story about ghosts. In 1932, British psychologist Frederick Bartlett published research that challenged the old idea of memory. In one famous experiment, people read a Native American folk story called The War of the Ghosts. The story had unfamiliar cultural details, strange events, and supernatural moments. Later, participants were asked to retell it. But they did not just forget parts, they changed it. Unfamiliar details disappeared. Strange moments became more normal. The story was reorganized until it made more sense inside the participants' own expectations. Bartlett argued that remembering was not reproduction, it was reconstruction. The brain uses what it already knows to rebuild incomplete information. Psychologists often call these mental frameworks schemas, and schemas are useful. They help you understand the world quickly. If you walk into a restaurant, you do not need to study every single object from scratch. Your brain already has a rough restaurant model: tables, menus, food, people, payment. That saves energy. But there is a cost. When information is missing, the brain does not always leave a blank space. It guesses. Most of the time, those guesses help you function. Sometimes, they quietly rewrite what happened. That weakness became much clearer in the 1970s through the work of psychologist Elizabeth Loftus. In one famous experiment, participants watched film of a traffic accident. Afterward, researchers asked how fast the cars were going, but the wording changed. Some people were asked how fast the cars were going when they hit each other. Others were asked how fast they were going when they smashed into each other. That one word changed the answers. People who heard smashed gave higher speed estimates. A week later, they were also more likely to say they remembered seeing broken glass, even though no broken glass had appeared in the film. They were not simply lying. The later suggestion had become tangled with the earlier memory. This became known as the misinformation effect. Information you encounter after an event can mix with your memory of the event itself. And that has serious consequences. A witness can see something sincerely, later hear a misleading question, and eventually remember the suggestion as part of the original experience. But changing one detail is different from inventing an entire event. Could suggestion create a memory of something that never happened at all? Researchers tested this with what became known as the lost in the mall technique. Participants were given descriptions of childhood events. Most were real, confirmed by family members. but one was fake. It described the participant getting lost in a shopping mall as a child and later being reunited with their family. Over several interviews, some participants began to report partial memories of it. Some even added extra details that had never been supplied. The false memories were usually weaker than the real ones, but the point was still unsettling. Given a plausible framework, the brain could begin constructing an experience around it. This does not mean every childhood memory is fake. Memory is often reliable enough to preserve the central meaning of an event. The problem is that the feeling of certainty does not reliably tell you which details are accurate. At this point, memory starts to look like a flawed system. Why not store the past exactly as it happened? The clue came from a Canadian patient known as KC. After a motorcycle accident, KC developed profound episodic amnesia. He still had language. He still knew facts about the world. He could learn certain skills. But he could no longer mentally relive specific events from his own life. He knew that some things had happened to him, but he could not return to those moments in his mind. Then researchers noticed something even stranger. When they asked KC to imagine a personal event in the future, he struggled. He could not clearly picture himself doing something tomorrow, taking a trip, or experiencing an ordinary future moment. His past was inaccessible, but so was his future. That changed the question. Maybe episodic memory is not just a storage system for things that already happened. Maybe remembering the past and imagining the future depend on the same deeper ability, constructing a scene from fragments. Brain imaging research has supported this connection. Remembering a personal event and imagining a possible future event use many overlapping brain regions, including parts of the hippocampus and the default mode network. They are not exactly the same process, but they share a lot of the same machinery. This helped shape an idea called the constructive episodic simulation hypothesis. The idea is that one major function of memory is not just preserving yesterday. It is giving the brain raw material to simulate tomorrow. Imagine you are preparing for a job interview. You might pull pieces from old interviews, awkward conversations, office rooms, difficult questions, moments of embarrassment, and moments where you did well. But you do not replay one exact event. You combine fragments into a simulation of something that has not happened yet. The same process helps you plan a holiday, prepare for an argument, predict someone's reaction, or decide whether a risk is worth taking. A perfectly rigid memory system might preserve the past more accurately, but it would be less useful for building possible futures. Flexibility gives us foresight. It also creates opportunities for error. If the brain separates experience into pieces and recombines those pieces, then pieces from different events can mix together. Suggestions can be mistaken for perceptions. Imagined details can start to feel familiar. Memory distortion may not be a broken version of memory. It may be an unavoidable side effect of what makes memory useful. That same flexibility may also connect memory to creativity. In some studies, people are asked to invent unusual uses for ordinary objects. A brick could become a doorstop, a weight, a sculpture, or part of a strange musical instrument. That kind of divergent thinking relies on broad association, connecting ideas that do not normally sit together. False memory can work through a similar pathway. For example, a person might study a list of words like bed, dream, pillow, tired, and night. Later, they may confidently remember seeing the word sleep. But sleep was never on the list. It was only strongly associated with the words that were. This does not mean creative people have bad memories. It means the mind's ability to move beyond literal evidence can produce both invention and illusion. The same brain that can imagine a future, invent a story, and solve a problem can also create a memory that never happened. And today, that weakness is facing something Bartlett and Loftus never had to deal with: synthetic media. AI-generated images and videos can now create realistic scenes that never occurred. In one recent study with 200 participants, people were shown different kinds of visual material: unedited images, AI-edited images, AI-generated videos, and videos made from AI-edited images. The strongest condition produced just over twice as many false recollections as the unedited image control. That does not mean every AI image becomes a false memory, but it shows how manipulated visual evidence can influence what people later believe they saw. And that matters because memory does not live alone. After an event, we encounter headlines, photos, comments, interviews, group chats, videos, and other people's accounts. Each new piece of information can affect how the original event gets reconstructed. AI can now manufacture persuasive post-event information at enormous scale. A fake image may not only mislead someone in the moment, later it may become mixed into their recollection of what really happened. This is especially dangerous in politics, criminal investigations, public emergencies, and viral scandals where repeated fabricated content can compete with real evidence. It is also why eyewitness testimony has to be treated carefully. Eyewitnesses can be sincere and still be mistaken. A confident witness is not automatically an accurate witness. Leading questions, repeated interviews, conversations with other witnesses, and exposure to media coverage can all affect later recall. That does not make eyewitness evidence useless. It means it should be supported by independent evidence whenever possible. There may also be a biological reason memories are open to change. Under certain conditions, retrieving a memory can make parts of it temporarily open to modification before it stabilizes again. This process is called reconsolidation. If new information appears during that window, it may become associated with the earlier memory. But reconsolidation does not mean every memory is rewritten every time you remember it. The effect has limits, and researchers are still studying when it happens. What it shows is simpler. Memory is not always a sealed file. It is a living system. So what are we supposed to do with that? The answer is not to distrust every memory you have. Your memory is not useless. It gets you through life. It preserves meaning, relationships, lessons, warnings, and identity. But it is not a camera. In high-stakes situations, memory should be checked against documents, recordings, physical evidence, and independent accounts. In everyday life, we should be a little more humble when certainty arrives without proof. And in an era of synthetic media, I remember seeing it can no longer be the final proof that something happened. The central mystery is not why memory sometimes fails to behave like a camera. The mystery disappears once we realize it was never a camera at all. Your memory is not a machine built only to preserve yesterday. It is a simulator that uses yesterday to help you survive tomorrow. And the same flexibility that allows it to imagine the future is also what allows it to rewrite the past.